Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. I had planned to arrive at the law office early, but when my attorney and I arrived, Nathan and his attorney were already waiting in the conference room. Seeing him sitting next to a beautiful woman made the jealousy inside me churn again and made me feel inferior. At 48, Nathan is even more handsome than he was in his 20s, tall and lanky, owns a successful business, and is a leader in the local chamber of commerce. I couldn't help but shudder at the thought that if today's negotiations didn't go well, I might never feel his reassuring embrace again. Nathan barely looked me in the eye as I followed my lawyer into the room. My face instantly turned pale as the red-headed female lawyer reached out to calm him. I mistakenly thought she was trying to get the meeting over with as quickly as possible so she could pursue Nathan. I know from experience that she will enjoy it because my husband is not only charming, he knows how to use his charm. Nathan smiled and gestured at her, but kept an indifferent expression when he looked at me. Since Nathan insisted on not talking to me, I had to be forced to attend this meeting while my attorney talked to the redhead. I sat down, took a folder out of my large tote bag, opened it, and spread out the 2 pages of my carefully prepared manuscript. Seeing Nathan smile slightly, I knew he'd realized I was fully prepared. He skillfully set up his laptop, plugged in his speakers, and then placed a piece of paper next to it. Then, as if nothing had happened, he put his hands on the table and looked at me with a polite but cold expression of neither anger, nor hatred, nor sadness. I prepared for this meeting for 3 full days, memorizing my script. I intend to use my knowledge of Nathan Brown to move him emotionally. We are gathered here to discuss the conditions under which I, Julianne Brown, agreed to sign the divorce petition. Nathan will listen to me for at least an hour. If everyone is ready, I suggest we start the clock now, I said, turning the knob on the timer. It began to make a loud ticking sound, emphasizing the silent atmosphere in the room. I was annoyed at Nathan's insistence on having an attorney present rather than meeting in private. I had planned to spend 45 minutes pouring out my feelings and then getting Nathan to admit something that would justify my misbehavior. Talking alone is awkward enough. Being in front of strangers is even more embarrassing. But there's no point in dwelling on the negativity now. I have no choice. I glanced at the notes I didn't really need, crossed my arms, recalled my friend Sophia's advice, and cleared my throat. I began by expressing my gratitude for Nathan's willingness to meet with me today. I admitted my mistake and made it clear that it had nothing to do with him but stemmed from my own selfishness. I've spent the last few days deeply reflecting on this, and I hope Nathan appreciates my honesty. I believe that in his heart he wants to forgive me, and my comment was intended to provide him with the justification he needs. Thinking about what would happen if the kids were home, I considered playing the Nathan, "You can't break up this family" card, which I'm sure would have worked. I watched his reaction to my speech carefully, trying to read something into his expression, but his reaction shocked me. In the silence that followed, Nathan's expression remained inscrutably neutral, and he didn't even look at me. He methodically picked up his pen and put a checkmark next to the first sentence of his notes. My opening statement almost completely confused me. I said exactly what he expected, and it shook my confidence. In my arrogance, I forgot that not only did I frame my argument based on 30 years of knowing him, but he spent those 30 years gaining insight into my every move. I admit I was shocked. I emphasized the need to stick to the script and reiterated that my situation with Nathan was due to my own stupid and selfish decisions. I expressed feelings of not having children, feeling old, unattractive, and worthless. I explained that I met Jason at work and described him as very educated and a skilled seducer who knew which buttons to push and when. Last year, when Nathan was away from home a lot, he started listening to my troubles like a friend. But one day Jason suggested a coffee shop, and unfortunately I agreed. Everything seemed innocent enough, and he acted like a good friend, so I didn't realize that he was actually very good at breaking through women's mental defenses. We progressed from the cafe to the restaurant where he complained to me about his wife. I know it's a cliched bridge, but by then I trusted him completely. The restaurant became more and more upscale, and the objects he gave me became more and more delightful. "Oh, Nathan, You can't imagine how good it feels when a man 15 years younger than you tries to win your heart. But you'd be proud of me because 4 months ago he asked me to have sex with him and I refused. I should have refused to see him again after that because his intentions were obvious. But by then I had become somewhat dependent on the effect his compliments and attention had on my self-esteem and self-confidence. I stopped, sobbing, and wiped my eyes with a finger I'd rubbed a piece of onion on in my pocket earlier. It stung so badly that I was afraid to even rub my other eye. One tearful I should be enough. I paused and started again, stuttering and hesitating. Oh, honey, I'm so ashamed I didn't break up with him. He took me to a fancy restaurant and bought an expensive bottle of Grange wine, even though he doesn't drink himself. Rather than waste it, I drank almost the entire bottle. I'm pretty sure that's what he wants. When we left the restaurant, I was too nervous to say no to him. He offered to take me home, and I stupidly agreed. As soon as we got to the driveway, he leaned over and kissed me, but I was too drunk to stop him. You know how I get after a few drinks. Then he started fondling my boobs, and that's when my sanity completely collapsed. And I remember just thinking that I should move him out of the driveway so the neighbors wouldn't see us. For the same reason, I opened the garage door and forced him to park inside. I cheated a little and admitted that even in the car, it occurred to me that Jason might be staying for a while, and I certainly didn't want my neighbors to see an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway the next morning. But it was entirely a calculated risk on my part. I know enough about men to understand that being betrayed is a major blow to a man's ego, and I want Nathan to make sure that no one else knows about it. Well, except for the two lawyers. Well, Jason got out of the car as the garage door closed and started kissing me again. Like I said, I've had most of my Grange wine just in time for him to get his way. He took my keys and led me inside. I took him to a guest room, and I'll be ashamed of that until I die. I let him do whatever he wanted to me. Nathan, I'm sorry. The only thing I'm thankful for is that I still have enough sense to make him wear a condom. After Jason was done, I think we both fell asleep. Me because I was drunk and him probably because he was tired after 4 or 5 months of chasing. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't drunk and depressed. When I wake up, I'm sure I'll kick him out immediately. Instead, you went into the room and turned on the light. I've never been so ashamed in my life. The look of pain on your face is killing me. I realize how much damage I've done to you and us with a simple mistake. Tears still streaming from one eye. I turned to my husband with pleading eyes. After a lifetime together, I would have thought I could read his expressions like an open book and tell how my request was going. But that is not the case. His expression remained neutral. In fact, he didn't even look at me. Oddly enough, he was fiddling with the laptop in front of him. I thought he was taking notes until he clicked on the link on the screen. A voice came out of the speakers, my voice. Hey, don't kiss me. You smell like beer. What about you? Smell like rotten wine. What? I only had a glass of white wine. The audio clip stopped and the room fell into a thunderous silence. I think that's what it felt like, the roar in my head drowning out everything else. Yes, I was embarrassed and humiliated when Nathan walked in on Jason and I that night, especially after Nathan grabbed Jason by the hair and beat him senseless. But that's nothing compared to the fact that I just got caught telling a big lie. It completely disrupted my rhythm. I was too confident that my draft would work. My eyes darted around the room. Nathan's lawyer smiles slightly, and my lawyer looks a little embarrassed. Nathan just looked at me expectantly with that damn blank expression. Later, I would never understand why I didn't immediately realize what it all meant. Hell, Nathan has recordings there. Driven into a corner, I never thought to pursue that logic. Why did he need to put a tape recorder there if he didn't know beforehand that he could record anything? What else did we say? The silence lasted long enough to become very uncomfortable, and I looked down at my notes that now seemed meaningless. In retrospect, I foolishly continued to speak from my prepared script, like a drowning man grasping for floating debris. That was just once, and it won't happen again. There's nothing left. Please believe me. I just wasn't strong enough to resist him. But I didn't lose my mind enough to let him do it without a condom or in our bed. He wanted to, but I would never do that no matter how drunk I was. We're in Megan's old room, right? Nathan just looks at me sadly and I don't know what's worse, his sad expression or his impassive one. He shook his head and turned to the computer. I felt, rather than heard him double-tap the icon, and I cringed until, I just love watching you lie to me with lust. This is too hot. Then, once it was over, there was another double tap and Jason's voice came on again. When can we make love in bed again? In that idiot husband of yours bed? It was fantastic last time. This time, Nathan clicked and ended the clip, then just looked at me in silence and accusation. What more can I say? Everything I claimed was disproved, not by Nathan, but by my own words. Protective cover? A one-time drunken mistake? No making out in your husband's bed? The whole life fell apart in just 30 words. Stand up. Stand up. I was dumbfounded, and as awkward as this was, I looked at Nathan for any clues. His neutral gaze revealed nothing. I noticed my lawyer looking at his watch, which made me realize the ticking timer. I realized I had 60 minutes to save my marriage and the clock was ticking and I admit it was going badly. I forced myself to suppress my inner panic and took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Nathan. I just lied about this being the first time. I just don't want to do any more damage than I've already done. I thought if I could convince you that it was just an accident, and for the reasons I mentioned, you might not be so angry. As soon as the words left my mouth, I lapsed back into silence. I was hesitant to confess that Jason and I had been in a relationship for over 6 months, dating several times a week. The thing is, I'm not sure how much Nathan really knows. His recorded conversations showed that he had found out that it wasn't the first or only time we had been together that night. But how much did he really know? I knew deep down that if I was caught lying again, it would really be over. I mentally admonished myself, well, Julianne, it's time to be careful with the wording, avoid the details, and just state the necessary facts. The truth is that Jason did seduce me, and the process went on for a while. He likes older women, it's true. I will admit that being pursued by a man who is almost the same age as my children does feed my vanity. I admit I was weak and failed to resist the temptation. I had wanted to say that we only used it once in the master bedroom, the first time. It's a lie, but at least it makes me look less bad. However, considering that I didn't know how much Nathan knew about my affair, I ultimately decided to keep quiet about it. Nonetheless, I can't keep my mouth shut about everything. Realizing how little time was left to salvage the situation, I wasn't sure what to do, so I turned my attention to my notes. I skipped the opening points that became meaningless when debunked and instead focused on key words labeled in capital letters. Nathan, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you and I never stopped respecting you. I tried to sound sincere. I said, I give you the same love I always have. Jason, he's just an unexpected interlude in life that doesn't diminish my love for you. If I have to say, this experience has rather made me appreciate our relationship even more. As I finished those words and lapsed into silence, Nathan turned his gaze back to his laptop screen. He frowned, seemingly confused for a moment, but quickly relaxed and began to play the new recording. This is a continuation of the previous track. I understand that Nathan is frowning because he's looking for some icon on the screen and realizes it's a file that's already open. It would have been nice if he hadn't noticed this, but he apparently replayed the video from the beginning. I heard Jason ask about making out in our marital bed again, just like the first time. I couldn't help but wince, knowing full well that my words were once again incriminating. My voice came over the recording. I already told you never again, especially after last time. That night Nathan got out of the shower and accidentally stepped on a drop of white liquid. Luckily, he believed my explanation and thought it was just snot from my sneeze. Upon hearing these words, I shrank even lower in my seat, anticipating more disturbing content to follow. As complacent as I initially felt when I said those words, that feeling is now gone, replaced by a deep sense of shame. You have to admit, honey, I continued on the recording, Nathan can act like an ignorant fool sometimes. I hear myself talking about how I've managed to avoid being found out, like the time Jason had to hide in the closet when Nathan came home early. Yeah, Nathan is really stupid. At first I thought it was cute that he trusted me so much, but now he seems like nothing more than an ignorant fool. Sometimes I even wonder if we could just have sex while he's in the room. Hearing myself say those words in such a mocking tone, I suddenly realized how cruel I had been. With words and an attitude like that, I can't even convince myself that I love and respect Nathan, let alone convince him. Confusion swept in again. Prior to this meeting, I had been convinced that I loved and respected Nathan. But after all that I've done and said, how is that possible? The room fell into a suffocating silence after the recording ended, only the ticking of the timer echoing. Nathan slowly turned to look at me. I couldn't look him in the eye, so I turned my gaze to his lawyer. The undisguised contempt on her face shut me up instantly. I suddenly realized that to her, Nathan was probably just one of many clients, and the thought sent a stab of pain through me. I flustered and turned my eyes away from my own lawyer, only to realize that she hadn't managed to hide the disdain on her face in time either. It was at this moment that I became acutely aware that I was fighting to save my future, but everyone around me was looking at me like I was garbage. What's even more ironic is that one of them was supposed to be on my side. My self-confidence dissipated as quickly as a dewdrop in the midday sun, and my self-esteem followed close behind. Maybe that's why I looked down at those notes of mine again and decided to take an offensive stance. Nathan, I spoke, a hint of a tremor in my voice. You've paid less and less attention to me over the past 6 months. You take me for granted, travel more than ever, and seem to be consciously distancing yourself from me. It all happened just as the kids were leaving home, and it made me feel more lost than ever. I paused, took a deep breath, and continued. You never show up when I need you. You have not comforted my anxieties about age, affirmed my charms, or given me warmth when I most needed solace. Speaking of which, I noticed Nathan's gaze return to his computer screen. I couldn't help but wince as I watched his fingers dance across the keyboard, opening another selected file. Soon Jason's voice came out of the speakers again, apparently shortly after our second encounter, shortly before Nathan found out the truth that fateful night. Jason complained, "We've had so little bed life lately. I want more. I want more," an exasperated Jason repeats on the recording. At this point, the recording was once again interrupted. Embarrassed, I bowed my head, avoiding the 3 judging gazes, and recalled how I had felt during our last conversation. The truth is, even for a young, energetic lover like Jason, the novelty is starting to wear off. My betrayal of my husband caused me to lose respect for Nathan, and it began to prick my conscience. The loss of respect, perhaps more than any other reason, explains why I emotionally distanced myself from Nathan. Even in preparing for this meeting, I fully intended to put the blame on him and say that he alienated me first. But now I realize that it was a lie. In order to allow myself to continue to betray him, I emotionally cut myself off from Nathan. Rejecting Nathan in bed was an easy decision, simply because Nathan's gentleness was so different from Jason's eagerness that it was impossible to confuse the two. It was an even stronger reminder of how wrong what I was doing was. So, I started rejecting my husband's advances. He would stick with it for a while at first, but then he stopped trying. I suddenly realized that this should have alerted me months ago. Nathan suddenly gave up sex around the same time he started working longer hours and traveling more frequently. At the time, I thought he was emotionally distancing himself from me as well. I closed my eyes, now completely confused as to which of us started alienating who first. Then a thought flashed. Nathan must have known for a long time. That's why he knew to hide the tape recorder in Megan's room. Geez. My entire strategy for the meeting was to minimize my faults, heal Nathan's wounded pride, get my life back on track, and regain the future I so desired. In short, I have absolutely no idea what to do. I perform better in planned situations, not when I need to improvise. That's why I prepared 2 pages of notes. But I have to do something. The clock is ticking. The ticking of the timer confirmed it. In desperation, I picked up my notes and started looking for hope. The roar in my head makes it hard to comprehend the words. Everything is so slow. Then I realized that the situation had completely changed. If Nathan has known for some time, what is his current state of mind? He's certainly hurt by my betrayal, but most of all, he must be worried about my motives. Am I dissatisfied with his bedside manner? Am I bored with him and want to explore my wild side? Am I in love with Jason, and am I really going to run away with him? I can correct those fears and doubts. I risked looking up into those expressionless eyes, pondering whether I should risk lying again. If only I could remember what else Jason and I talked about that fateful night. If only I could be sure this was the only night Nathan recorded. Of course, the order must be suspect. Installing a tape recorder, refusing. He couldn't have been sure for so long. I was desperate to convince him of the truth, that I still loved and respected him. I hope he doesn't abandon me, and this proves how I feel. This goes far beyond my fear of losing my comfortable lifestyle. But how can I convince him that I respect him? After we both heard me call him a fool in front of my lover? What's the point of trying to justify demeaning him in front of my lover by saying it's just to assuage my conscience, to create common ground between Jason and me? I don't see it. The same applies to love for him. If I caught him cheating on me, there was no way I could get the conclusion out of me that he still loved me. So convincing him that I love and respect him will take time. But how long is that damn timer going to tick? To convince him of this, one thing is certain. My next few sentences will score points. Lots of points. Gathering my courage, I looked straight across the table at Nathan. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. Nathan, I understand that you may feel that I no longer love or respect you. But believe me, that is not the case. I love you and the life we've built together. I truly hope to spend the rest of my life with you. I paused for a moment, watching his reaction carefully, then continued. I recognized that my actions were a serious mistake. Jason was just a distraction. I never loved him. I'm much less likely to run away with him. I recognize my faults, especially in response to Jason's offer to limit our intimacy. Looking back, I really don't know why I agreed to this. I must admit that Jason lacks your stamina and experience. I acted out of pure lust and selfishness. While it brought me brief satisfaction physically, emotionally it was a blank slate. I stopped and watched for Nathan's reaction. His expression remained elusive, but I seemed to see a flash of pain in his eyes. I continued. I want to make it clear that I haven't done any of those things with Jason that I've refused to do with you for years. Those special intimate moments belong only to you and me. Time seemed to slow down, as experienced by the dying. My marriage was slowly crumbling before my eyes, while everything around me seemed to be functioning normally. To my left, my lawyer gave a disgusted look, threw his pen on the table, and turned to face me. It's clear that at the moment I can't even spend money on someone who supports me. Nathan's attorney leaned out sideways to get a better look at the laptop screen. That's when I realized that Nathan wasn't playing an audio file, but watching a video clip. This perception makes the whole situation worse. Although he didn't look at me, his reaction conveyed a deep hurt, as if the people who were supposed to support him had betrayed him. I saw a look of extreme pain flash across his face, and a tear even slipped from the corner of his eye near my side. I couldn't help but wonder if he was really in pain, or had become so numb that he could only support himself by staring at the screen. In the midst of this chaos, some inconsequential facts popped into my mind. The recording was made at least 3 weeks before the conflict, which meant that Nathan had been witnessing my betrayal for some time, enough to see a pattern. Silence once again enveloped the room as the loudspeaker playback came to an end. The heat that once filled the room now shifted to a feeling of filth, sloppiness, and vulgarity. I looked down at the table as my attorney spread the divorce papers in front of me. I feel helpless. I can't argue with the despicable behavior that Nathan so readily exposes. He easily dismantled all my defenses, delusions, and feeble attempts at reconciliation. It's all over. Nathan, like a conductor of an orchestra, didn't say a word today. Instead, he simply gestures to indicate the next part he wants to play, using his skills and talents in a silent symphony of parting. No, not Nathan. It was I who built the guillotine myself, blindfolded and with a noose in my hand. I kicked away the supporting planks myself. Nathan just put up a guillotine and left. He knew what I would say when the last recording was played. He didn't give me any chance for salvation. When I make an argument based on 30 years of knowing him, I forget that he's been watching me with the same sharp, insightful eye for 30 years. The shame and humiliation were unbearable and eventually forced me to run away. I needed to escape from here, escape back to the house that was still my house at least until Nathan moved out. That was part of the deal. Fleeing to children who hopefully will never know the truth and will continue to love me unconditionally. The only path to redemption is to accept the reality of losing most of my life. I grabbed a pen, signed both agreements, and threw the pen away with a flourish. I was a little surprised that Nathan's business wasn't worth very much, but that's what my attorney assessed, and of course, by then Nathan had had plenty of time to hide most of his assets. My attorney took the signed document, gave me a copy, and put the rest in a briefcase. She left the room, leaving me sitting there, frozen, torn between the desire to run away and the desire to leave a positive message. I longed for a glimmer of hope, something to make me believe that maybe one day it would still be possible to rekindle the flame of this relationship. I want Nathan to know that I still care about his well-being. The shrill sound of the alarm clock interrupted my thoughts, and I stood up, ready to say my positive words. The one holding Nathan's hands desperately pleaded with him not to seek revenge on Jason, stating that she would never forgive herself if he went to jail for it. Nathan responded with another disturbing video. Thank goodness it wasn't my voice this time, but another woman speaking in an almost shrill tone. She mentions the consequences he would have faced if her brothers had gotten to Jason first. She calls herself Mrs. Jason. At first, I thought Jason kept silent after the beating out of fear. But now I realize that being divorced and penniless was probably the end the cheater deserved. When I was ready to leave, I couldn't look Nathan in the face. Whether he was expressionless, laughing, or crying, it all pained me. It's a constant reminder of the damage I've done to this good man. He's lost everything but my house and my money, and suffered a huge emotional blow, all because of me. I should take all his anger. Tears streaming down my face, I managed to squeeze out a weak, "Bye, honey," and hobbled to the door. My pathetic attempts to salvage the old life tried, but the cut was discarded like a plague bug. Maybe my daughter Megan will come visit me while I'm in a drunken stupor. If she can't, then it's my son Joel. Just as I started to push on the door, a voice from behind me caught my attention. Another damn recording. An excited young male voice accused, "Liar." A very familiar female voice interjected, "Are you sure, Dad? I think I'm better off drinking alone." My hand stopped on the doorknob and my entire body froze. That young male voice, that familiar female voice, they echoed in my head like a hammer blow to my heart. I turned slowly to see Nathan staring at me, his eyes filled with a complex emotion I had never seen before. "Joel, Megan," I whispered, my voice shaking with shock. Nathan nodded and pressed play. The ensuing conversation brought my world crashing down. Joel's voice was filled with anger and disappointment. How could Mom do this? Is our family nothing to her? Megan, on the other hand, was a little calmer, but the anguish in her tone was just as obvious. "I don't know, Joel. I really don't know. Maybe she had her reasons, but that doesn't judge her behavior." Joel continued, "Should we tell Dad? He has a right to know the truth." Megan sighed. "I think Dad might already know. Haven't you noticed the change in his behavior lately? We should wait for him to talk to us." This concludes the recording. The silence in the room was heavier than at any time before. I felt my legs go weak and had to hold onto the door frame to stay on my feet. My kids know. They know everything. And, judging from the recording, they seem to have known about it before Nathan found out. I looked over at Nathan, expecting to read something into his expression, but he still had that inscrutable look on his face. This time, however, I seemed to see a hint of pity in the depths of his eyes. "Nathan," I choked out, "the kids, they—" He interrupted me gently. "Yes, Julianne, they know. In fact, they were the ones who discovered it first. Joel saw your messages on her cell phone and Megan met you at the mall. When they came to me and told me everything, I didn't believe them at first. But then—" His voice faded. But I had understood everything. I felt a wave of vertigo, as if the whole world was spinning beneath me. Not only my husband, but even my children witnessed my betrayal. It's not just Nathan I'm hurting, it's the whole family. So, I spoke with difficulty. All this, the recordings, the videos, all to make me face the truth? Nathan nodded. Partly. But more than that, it's to make you understand how many people are affected by your actions. Not just me, but our kids and even Jason's family. He stood up and walked toward the door. As he passed me, he stopped and whispered, "I hope you find what you've been looking for." But remember, it comes at the cost of losing everything that really matters to you. With Nathan out of the room, I stood alone, facing the consequences of my actions. I realized that there are some mistakes that can't be fixed, some hurts that can't be healed. Not only did my selfishness destroy my marriage, it forever changed my relationship with my children. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound of the timer continued, as if mocking me, reminding me that time never turns back and that our choices, once made, cannot be easily changed. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.